This episode is proudly supported by ArtsPay. As a hospitality owner, you know that when it comes to business, the right tools are everything, especially when it comes to payments. ArtsPay, based in Australia, is a payment solution built on a unique model. They give 50% of their profits back to the arts community. They provide world-class point of sale, payments and support that make your operations run smoothly. But with every transaction, a portion of the fees helps build a permanent funding source for Australia's artists and cultural institutions. What's best is it costs less too. The result is a powerful way for your business to grow and become a force for good. You're not just taking payments, you're directly supporting the vibrant culture that makes our communities unique. ArtsPay believes that business should add up for everyone. For more information, go to artspay.com. ArtsPay, it pays to make the change.
Because when people say seasonal produce in Australia, everybody always says, we use a seasonal menu, but that seasonal menu is European season, it's not Australian season. So how do we look at what Australian seasons are?
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Today we have a true visionary who has dedicated her life to celebrating and sharing Indigenous Australian ingredients. As a professional chef with over 25 years of experience and the founder of the Mabu Mabu brand, Tuckshop and Big Esso, please welcome Nornie Bero. Nornie, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
It's good to get you on the show. You're very busy with lots of things going on. How are things at the moment?
Yeah, look, you just never know. I feel like I leave myself to all new experiences. So there's always something happening. And when you think that there's nothing happening, something else will come up. So it can be a busy time, 24/7 and traveling a lot at the moment, which is always really big too as well. So.
Tell us a little bit about the Mabu Mabu brand. I know there's so many elements to the work that you do, but could encapsulate that for us.
Yeah, so Mabu Mabu started, I guess, at kind of came because I started off as a condiment business. So I started off at South Melbourne Market as a condiment business, and it just sort of grew from there. I never knew that we were going to be as big as it was going to be. And it all gradually happened and organically happened as well from, starting as condiments. And I still do condiments, it's like going back to your roots again sort of thing. And I guess the whole idea of starting in condiments and then building an events sort of team after that, and then going into a cafe and then going into a restaurant and then going back to condiments. So it's and staying in events. So it's like a 360 degrees of stuff that I've done for it, but it just happened so organically and it was just time for the next step. And now I guess I'm looking at the next step of what Mabu Mabu is going to bring. But I really loved being a condiment business and starting off in that. That was just my jam from when I was a kid. So I think it's quite fitting that I, still am in it.
Tell us a little bit about 2018 and the condiment sort of launch that you did. We're so blessed in Australia with so many different cultures and cuisines, and the cabinet is often filled with all sorts of condiments, but yours are very different and very focused on Indigenous ingredients. Tell us a bit about the range and how you created them.
Yeah, so I just saw, I was like, why are we not talking a lot about our native flavors and when you grow up with it, you really do want to I was like, why is no one talking about it, and why is there a missing gap in it? And I really wanted to kind of showcase it. And it was funny when I first started, because it was like total education every single day. Like, people were like, who are you? Like, where do you come from? There was a lot of that. And I was like, I just come from down the street. But yeah, it was like a total education the whole entire time. Like I had a few people go, like, where is the Torres Strait? And and I was like, oh, it's that like it's a group of islands like right near Papua New Guinea and the tip of Cape York. And I even had people come in and go, oh, this is not very Torres Strait. And I was like, oh, well, have you been? And he would, like, a guy said to me, no, I haven't. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I wasn't quite sure what you meant then. Um, so it was about educating people where I come from and that that I grew up eating this stuff and I used to pickle stuff when I was a kid to get some 1 cent and 2 cent pieces so I could buy lollies from the R&F. And so I was kind of bringing my childhood love of things back and things that I grew up with, and really wanting to express where I come from, I guess, and how wonderful our Australian produce really is. And I like, you have this mindset of thinking, what is Australian cuisine? And because we're so multicultural, I just wanted to put Indigenous cuisine on the map too, as well.
Yeah. Well, I know the range is quite vast. Is there a couple of products you can tell us about that really exemplify kind of the range that you have?
Oh yeah, I mean, like we have a few of our tropical like spice blends, which are great. I mean, when I came on the market, it was so expensive for native ingredients to be just like, for people to attain. And I came on the market and I did something really radical. I blanket priced everything because I wanted, when you grow up with something that was for free, I was like, why are we paying for something that just comes out of our backyard? So much money for it. And I was like, I wanted whoever had no matter what range of income you had, I wanted you to be able to afford something. And so I did something really thing. And that brought down the prices of native ingredients within Australia. I didn't think I was going to be like, making it, doing a big change, but I did. I did something, and still today, actually, from that I think I've only gone up like a couple of dollars, like from like 2018 since then. So I really haven't changed, and every single spice that I have on the shelf and thing are still all the same price. They don't vary in price. And I just really wanted, I was like, why is it not in your pantry? So, yeah, so I guess like, I just thought, why pepperberry is not in your pantry? I just don't like, I can't fathom the idea that we have our own pepper in this country and we're not enjoying it every single day. So it was a big deal to kind of have our spice blends and obviously, like I'm a condiment girl too as well. So I was making hot sauces and I think my biggest seller back then was my bush tomato, like, tomato sauce, where it was like, a blend of like bush tomatoes and pepper berries and really kind of for the adult palate. But it just took off. And so, from the pineapple hot sauce to being one of the biggest sellers too, as well, because that's the island girl in me. Then to like the tropical lemon aspen spice, which is kind of a bit like our crack salt. I don't know if you can say that actually, but yeah, very addictive. So in the background, we call it the crack salt, like, and yeah, there was just a few. And then I went into like, um, and we would make seasonal jams out of all of the native fruits that would come in too as well. And that was like, just an amazing sort of opportunity for us. And used to have a guy that came to the market and he would like buy 10 jams at a time. And I'd be like, why? Like, and he's like, I only like this one. I don't want to come back to the other ones that you're going to make. And I was like, well, a yearly thing of you buying jams, 10 jams at a time. I was like, that's a lot of jam to go through in a year. And I was like, why don't you enjoy the next seasons of stuff? And he's like, no, I only like this one. So that was our like desert marmalade back then, desert lime marmalade. And we had country chutneys too as well. And I would make like a salsa like verde out of like warrigal greens and saltbush, and those things were just like biggest things that just kind of like people. And it was like I said, it was just total education all the way through.
Yeah, what was that like for you? Because obviously now we see indigenous ingredients across menus across the country, but we're still being educated on how to use them and the best ways to use them. But was it challenging to sell them? When you first got started.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. Yeah, I had a friend of mine who would, like, if I went to do an event, and he would come and watch the stall, and he would talk too much to customers, so then he wouldn't sell a thing, and he's just like, I would walk in and be able to like say something, and he would come back with like, I think you could sell bark to someone, like, um, and they'll buy it, and I was like, you're just making it too complicated. Like, you don't have to go in a whole like 30-minute speech about one ingredient. It's just, you have to make it relatable, and I think that's the main thing. I think it's so funny because back then everybody just kept going, oh, it's so foreign, it's so foreign, and I'm like, the word foreign is foreign, like, and when these ingredients are like everyday stuff that we can use and have in our pantry. Just like I said, like, you could just have pepper berries in a pepper grinder and use it. Like, it's going to be one of the best things you probably would put in your pantry. And it just like had that beautiful moment of like where people would come and go, oh, that smells delicious. And it's the uniqueness that we have. And it was always a harder sell, but it's something that I still think today it can be a hard sell sometimes, because unless you make it relatable, people don't know how to get it over the line, But I use that same context of like thinking when I was a kid, and in my home ec class, when you had to make stroganoff or you had to use basil and stuff for the first time. Those are all your first moves. And I think, native ingredients is exactly the same. It's just using it for the first time and making sure that it'll like, complement your pantry.
Well, I want to explore how you grew from that to all of the things that you do now a little bit later on in the conversation. But take us back to when you were young. Do you have any stories of food, and was it quite important to you and your family growing up?
Yes, food is like the lifeblood of the island, It's like that, it's a part of your daily life. So on how to feed your family, how to think, just going out. And I remember as kids we always just went home for dinner, because like you can make your own snacks outside. Like we would spend outdoors all the time picking, like you could just feed yourself. Like if you needed a snack, you catch a fish, you make some namas, like, which is our version of shavish. And those are the little snacks that you grow up with, or you just crack an oyster off a rock, and eat it. And then you eat the fruit that is on the trees. Then you just come home for dinner, that you have with the family. But your life is about fishing, and it's about hunting, and it's about, collecting things. And when I was a kid, my dad used to send me to confirmation classes, and I was like very uninterested in it. So there was tamarind and mangoes trees at the cathedral. So I would spend my days like picking tamarinds and mangoes off the trees and then pickling them. Like I'd have my jars all set up, and I'd make like from half ripe mangoes to ripe mangoes and do different like kind of pickles to go with it, and tamarinds as well. Shake them up, get all the like, ingredients, and dissolve all the like sugar that I would add to them too as well. And then I would sell it to the kids that went to confirmation classes for 1 cent and 2 cent pieces, so that I could buy jellies or salty plums from the RNF, like, which is our version of a 7-Eleven on the island. So for me, my dad gave me my first spear when I could, like, when I got into double figures. So I would be out on the reef every morning anyway, catching octopus, bringing it home, pickling it, and having it the next day. And so you just have this like, it's a different type of living, and you never think that you're not feeding yourself. Like, and my dad, I remember him always saying, like, on how do you bring income into a household. And most of the time it was so that we needed electricity to, like, run the generator, and we needed petrol money, and he would like go out catching big fish and make fish burgers, for the locals. Because he used to make like pumpkin buns and pumpkin damper, and I would like deliver it before school for him. So I guess I was just always watching him, from him waking up very early and making pumpkin buns and making the damper and then delivering it and turning half of our house into a tuck shop. So food has always been around. But I also grew up with a single dad who was like a feminist as well, and he was, I was like, I'm not standing in no kitchen and cooking for anybody, kind of stuff. Because I was like, if I can get my own food, everyone can get their own food, like, as a kid. Uh, and I would go out and catch fish for my dad and I for dinner, and if I couldn't get a big one, I would bring home like a bag of sardines and roast them under the grill, like, so it'd be like sardines for me and him and sardines for the dog, and I guess, like, yeah, food has just always been a part of my life, and it wasn't never a part of like growing up.
Yeah, that is extraordinary. What a wonderful childhood. Tell us about career-wise. When were the seeds sort of planted for you to move into food?
Wow, this is I failed home ec, like, because I didn't like making beef stroganoff, and I failed at it. And my home ec teacher, if she could see me now, I would laugh in her face. Um, but yeah, like, I didn't do very well in home ec because I wanted to go and build stuff, and I thought it was really shitty that I had to like cook and like sew and stuff. Um, and it was just like that whole idea. It's funny because it's like, well, you can stand in the kitchen, but don't get paid for it. And I was like, no, I'm get paid for it. If I'm going to stand in front of it in a kitchen. But the thing is, it's just like I had like, look, I was a very rebel child. I was a rebel child. I fought against most of things, that my dad either told me I was going to do. My dad always knew that I was going to be a chef. He was like, you're so interested in food. You're going to do something in food. And I was like, no, I do not want to stand in a kitchen and serve people, you know? So I went out and did a whole bunch of other things. Like, but my dad like kind of instilled it to get a trade. My dad got sick really early. So I had to kind of put a roof over my head early on in my he got sick very early, so I needed to be able to support myself, and I couldn't afford to go to uni. So I went out and got a trade, and I worked on some farm. Like, I was working on a banana farm up in Isval, and I was moonlighting in like a pub, in the nights, because my boss at the time used to give me this little Datsun to drive the workers around, so pick them up in the morning, because I was a morning person. But like, I was only 16. And I would pick up the workers in the morning, and I would take them to the farm, and we would work on the farm all day, and then the boys would be like, just take us to the pub for a beer. And I was like, okay. And then drop them off at home. And then I would moonlight in the kitchens while they were like in the pub having a drink. And then I dropped them off, to their houses and pick them up early again. And so I had this opportunity to just like kind of work in this pub. And then I got really interested in it. And I thought, oh, look, I mean, like, this could be an opportunity. And I was like, you're very interested in it. You should do it. And so I was driving cherry pickers and like kind of working, and then when I was like, you know what, you're right, I should do something about this. But when I came to Melbourne, about a year and a half later, I was on my way to Melbourne, because I was like, no, I'm going where the city of food is. I'm going to do this, But when I got here, I was like, oh, I still need a trade. So I did a house painting apprenticeship. And I was still moonlighting at night. I was like, no, I'm going to see all the suburbs of Melbourne. And I worked for this father and son team, and I painted homes, like old people's homes and stuff around Melbourne to get like all the things while I was still moonlighting in kitchens. And then I was like, oh, I better take this seriously now. And that's how it started, really. I started to take it seriously after, but that wasn't the only thing. I was like, oh, I love this painting thing. And then I had a friend who said, why don't you come and work on trucks? Because they're looking for girls, like, something different, like, eye for detail and stuff. I was like, okay. So I went off and built semi-trailers. And I would repair semi-trailers. And then they said, oh, look, you're really good. Can you come into repairs? And I was like, okay, I'll come into repairs. And again, moonlighting at night in kitchens. And then finally I got my foot in the door, and I was like, I better take this seriously and do an apprenticeship in in chefing. So I started to take myself seriously, and I haven't left the industry since.
What's been the sort of important people or venues that you've worked at and with?
To be honest, like, I'm not going to lie, it was very hard for me to get in the industry here. Back then, it was a very different time, like they weren't really letting women in the door. It was very difficult back then to get your foot in the door, being a woman. And then on top of that, I was black. So like, yay for me. So I had this like double whammy of like not being able to like get in the door. But what I did is I had a friend who said, hey, we're all going over to Europe, to England. And I was like, oh, look, I've never none of my family has ever achieved that. So I saved every cent that I could do with working double jobs. And I think back then, you had to have a certain amount of money in your bank, before they let you out of the country. It was like $5,000 or something, back then. You were like, you had to show that you had money to pay for yourself to come back. And I went over to England, and actually it really opened doors for me there. So I did my apprenticeship in Japanese restaurants over there, and I was very lucky, and I stayed there for such a long time. I lived over there for like almost 7 years. And yeah, just really enjoyed it. And no one looked at me for the color of my skin. No one looked at me for being a woman. They just looked at me as being Australian and someone who back then had Australians had a really good reputation of being able to be hard workers and stuff. So I actually thrived in there. So when I came back to Melbourne, and I came back here as well, I didn't even go back. It was such a funny kind of story of leaving my dad at the time when I was moving to Melbourne, because I was just turning 18. And then I came here, and all of a sudden I'm in Europe, and I'm overseas. And then my dad didn't see me until 10 years later. Like, I came back this like kind of grown person. I was just turning 18. I came back when I was 28. So he sort of saw this kid leaving and then a grown woman come back, and he sort of looked at me like, okay. Like, I had a few tats by then, and I was a very different person. And I spoke to him in every country that I went to, and he kept culture alive with me while I was away. And he never really, I would tell him I would be in this country, and he'd be like, yeah, but your uncle and your auntie, this is what's happening. And I'd be like, okay, don't worry about it then. Like, he cared very little that I was like in a whole other country. Because he wanted me to keep that culture alive and keep, keep informing me, because I'm the eldest in my family. So I have a lot of responsibilities in that sense. But yeah, I guess for me, the best thing that I ever did was go away to do what I love now. And, the synergies that the Torres Strait has with Japanese culture. I mean, like, I just came back from Japan too as well, which is the most amazing thing that I've done in my career too as well. But the synergies that we have from the purling and the beach to mer just kind of resonated with me, because it feels like you're just coming home, So I guess like being in Melbourne, I just learned how to hunt and gather in a different way. And when you come to a whole other city where you don't have family, or you don't have, like, I could count, like, there was about maybe 4 island people that were here, like, back then. And like, there's so many more now, but it was a very small pool. I kind of had to. I was like basically fresh off the boat, like so.
What was Melbourne like when you came back from the UK, having been there, 7 or 8 years earlier?
Look, to be honest, Melbourne was still hard back then. It was still hard. It didn't get better until like probably 5 years. I still struggled, to get a foot in the door again. Even though I had all this experience and stuff, I still had a problem. Like, it was still hard. It was still hard for women. It was still hard for Black women, on top of that. But, I came in and it was really great. And then I worked on Lygon Street for a really long time at Beverly and John Carlo's like restaurant, which kind of like, helped my sort of being able to get your foot back in the door here in Australia. But yeah, I started. Yeah, I guess when you think about it, it was not an easy road. This industry, but it's an industry that I absolutely love so much. Like I literally breathe food.
Did you think the industry has changed much since then?
Oh yes. Oh yeah. It definitely has. I mean, like, it's a different world now, I mean, back then, I'm not, I don't know if you remember this or if anybody remembers this, we barely got paid, and we were just told like, this is what you get. I remember back in the day, my boss used to say, do I pay you every week? And I'm like, you're supposed to pay me every week. And he said, and he would say, I pay you. So you will work wherever I tell you to work. So if I say you go upstairs, you'll go upstairs and you'll work up there. I was like, you have to pay me every week. I work. And he goes like, no, you will go upstairs. I won't say who that was because like, I'm still friends with some of their families. But yeah, he used to say that to me. He was like, I don't care what you say. You will go up there and you will do as you're told. And it's very different now, it was, I could tell you so many stories of being like spat at and like stabbed and burnt. Oh, the amount of times that I have been burnt. Yeah, it was it was not an easy industry back then, but it was an industry that I think because I grew up with cousin brothers and I grew up with a dad who was like fierce. I was like, you're not running me out of the town, like, of like the stuff that I want to do in my life. And so I stuck it out and I still, but it did, like all of that experience that I had though, really did help me when I opened my own business. Cause then it was like, I know how not to treat people. And that was the biggest learning curve that I think I ever had.
It's really extraordinary what you have built off just starting with spices and condiments with Mabu Mabu. Tell us how you moved into events and then the cafe and the restaurant. How did you grow? Was it an organic process?
Yeah, it was. So, like, starting off a condiment business, and I was doing like I called it the pink dollars back then. So it was all like my gay friends' parents and their like uncles and aunties who I did anniversaries for. They would like ask me to come and do their anniversaries, their birthday parties, and I would like I'd cook all the food and then like take it to their house and then have all this stuff, and then they would work for a university or they would, and then I got my foot in the door with universities, and then I got my foot into law firms, and we built like a whole events team out of, and I got my house certified. I got my house certified by the council so that I could do like my products and also like my catering out of it too as well. As City of Melbourne at that time too as well. I've been with a few different like things, and so I did it legitly and stuff. But yeah, it just rolled into more and more, and I would have people come up, and I had this opportunity to like I needed bigger space because I was doing so much more events, and so I had this opportunity to go to Yarraville and open the cafe, and we did that and it was great. We did so many things out of that little spot, and sometimes I regret we left there because it was so unique to us. And we just realized people were just like, we want more food from you. Can we come and sit somewhere? Can we, like, I had this opportunity for when I had my spot at South Mill Market. I had a company that really wanted my spot, and I was like, oh, like, I I really like it here because I wanted to be in this market space, but they hounded me for a long time to have my spot. So I sold my spot at South Mill Market to open my first cafe, and opening my first cafe was like something that I never ever thought that I would do. And it just sort of rolled on from there. And COVID hit just as we opened the cafe. And it rolled into a lot more during COVID because I sort of took what my dad did in the sense of how do I keep the lights on and how do I keep my people. And I took a little bit out of his book, a little bit going, how do I do something? And the reason I guess Mabu Mabu became so much bigger is because I did damper classes online. And I said, I'll send you out a kit to get native ingredients into your pantry. And why don't you cook along with me to make some damper? And during COVID, I'd do 6 classes a day of like, I sent out a newsletter to all the corporate businesses that I had. And I said, hey, do you want to come and do this? And we did this little damper kit for $15. And we sent it out to them to make saltbush and pepperberry like damper and stuff if they wanted to. And we would just make damper together and talk about because everybody was making sourdough. I was like, see, why make sourdough when you can make more damper? Um, so that's what I did, and that's what actually got me into a lot of people's living rooms. And we would just drop like condiments off, drop everything off. It was one of the biggest things that we ever that could happen. And in that meantime, we were just, you know, we were we were going into Fed Square, and Fed Square, when we only opened for 4 days and then we were closed for I think it was 6 months because of COVID. And we did dinner packs and sent things out. And I was still doing the classes. I actually still do classes today since then. They're different. They're different now, but I still do the same classes. And it was the nicest thing that I could have done because it was about I I got native ingredients in so many pantries, by doing that. And it was I think it just, I think it was like a thing from growing up, seeing my dad do it and making that pumpkin damper that he did and showcasing that. So, and that's how, that's how it rolled on. It was just about trying to make it through some tough times, but also just kind of doing what my dad did or how we grew up as a family of, keeping that sort of culture alive, but also keeping the narrative of, how resilient we are to keep going.
Not only are you doing all these things in food, but you're also on the screens as well with Island Echoes. Tell us a little bit about that and what that was like.
Oh yeah, Island Echoes. I cannot believe I had the opportunity to do that. It was like a coming home story for me, and especially going back to Murray Island and to Mer, or, where my language comes from and my father comes from, and that was I didn't know how emotional I was going to be about that, but it we my camera crew obviously were very good because they captured every single thing that happened while we were there. And but the joy of going back home to where every face looks like your dad was just this is why I do it. This is why I just wanted to showcase, living in Melbourne. When you think about the joy of, each cuisine that we have here. And I've been here such a long time, and you have every sort of district has a street of their own. So there's a Lygon Street where the Italians are. There's, you go to Sydney Road. All these streets have. You come to you're in Footscray. You have Vietnamese and African. You have the worlds of cuisine here. And my dream is always, where is our strip? You know, where is the Indigenous strip? Where is it? Because the first time when I opened my doors of the cafe, I had a customer come in, and she said to me, I didn't know Indigenous people had cuisine. And I said, well, we got to eat, you know. I said, I'm working on my goal weight here, you know. And so that gave me a drive to showcase our cuisine. And not just that, showcase what came out of all that, like the cuisine that we created out of missions, out of what we were told not to eat and then re-eat. So that becomes our food culture as well. So I wanted to showcase that and put it in this amazing light of going, look how cool our own cuisine is. And how can we look at modern Australian food for the future too as well?
You've been a driving force with the education of Indigenous ingredients in Australia for many years now. What would you say to people that haven't really dabbled or wanting to use the ingredients? What advice would you have for them?
Look, start small. Just start with two things. Start with two things in your pantry. And it's all about taste and smell. And don't forget, this is one thing that people don't realize too as well, is that when we use ingredients or we taste ingredients, we don't go out and just put pepper in our mouth and eat it. We add it to things to because I do all these tastings all the time, and I say to people after they put it in the mouth, I say to them, I never said it was going to taste good. I said when you put it and add it with things, it's going to taste better. And go out and try it. Just like you said, if you look, it's just like if you try a wine, it's the same thing. Just try a different native. I think the three sort of spices that everybody should try is pepperberry, saltbush, and wattle seeds. I mean, those are the three main things that you should be trying, or just have it in your pantry because wattle seeds are one of those things that have 165 different species. They all taste very different, and you can try them. But don't forget too as well, I say this now that when people ask me to write stuff and I say, look, all of these recipes that are done right now with native ingredients are being done for the first time. They don't exist yet. So there is more and more that will come with native foods in it. Those recipes will start to exist. But why not be a part of making them exist? Let's try it out. Just have that faith in yourself that if you want to try something, it all goes back to when you tried basil for the first time. It's the same if you just replace that basil with saltbush or warrigal greens. So it's about just thinking about that. And you know what? If you need any kind of tips and hints, we're always good to give you a little tip and hint too as well of trying to make it relatable. But don't be scared of using natives. I think we should be proud of using native foods because it is unique to us. It is our own flavor. If anybody comes from anywhere else in the world, this is the stuff we should be giving them. This is the stuff we should be representing because it's unique to us. We should be proud of that. And we shouldn't let other people take it away from us too as well. And I bet you any money, some of you out there, all those people, your nan and your grandparents or your great parents, they would already been picking this stuff off the trees and using it anyway too as well. So you probably tasted it before. You just got to try it again.
Well, it's amazing what you're doing. What do you love about what you do?
I think I just love the amazement. Every time somebody smells a spice, it always amazes me that they get so shocked by it. And they're every single time I get someone to taste or smell pepperberries and wattle seeds or even just the fresh stuff, and when they look at it and go, oh my God, and then when someone has that realization that it's growing in their yard, that's the best thing as well, when you see that. Like they're like, oh my God, I have this in my yard. I was like, and they're like, oh, I thought it was poisonous. I'm like, that's what birds are for. No, I'm kidding. Um, but yeah, it's it's about just like, going back to grassroots a little bit and just having faith that we have unique flavors here too as well. It's just like lemon. When you think about lemon myrtle leaves and cinnamon myrtle leaves and aniseed myrtle leaves and stuff, they give you that whole thing of like, when we use lime leaves. So why not just go out there and try something a little bit different? And I say different is because we're so set in our way. As eaters, we're so set in our way. We just, every week we go out and we buy an eggplant. Every week we go out and buy a pumpkin because we think those are the two things that we have to eat every week. We are the consumers, so we kind of dictate what goes on the shelf. So if you really want natives, and there's always someone at the markets that are selling native ingredients, just ask for it. The more we ask for it, the more it'll be on the shelves. It's up to us to like kind of influence like what we're going to be eating our shelves. So my challenge is try something different, at least one thing a week. Try I'm a big yam girl, so I'm going to talk about yams. But try something else. Don't have a potato, have a yam. Or just try something that is out of our circle of will, because we as like consumers or even just food eaters, we eat 10% probably of food in the world because we eat the same thing over and over again. So for me, I think we just have to broaden our horizons a little bit. Because when people say seasonal produce in Australia, everybody always says, we use a seasonal menu, but that seasonal menu is European season. It's not Australian season. So how do we look at what Australian seasons are? And that's across the board of the different states and the different climates that we have. So what does that look like for us? I think we need to be having a conversation of like, what does Australian food systems look like for the future? And how does our food wheel look like for us too as well? Because when you go to the Torres Strait, each island has a food wheel. And it goes on to that like wet season, dry season, those kind of things, and what will be around in that season. And we always talk about like, how there was this like conversation, back in, and it still kind of happens a little, where they say that, Indigenous people didn't stay in one spot. So that's like, and I was like, well, why don't you think that they just moved with the seasons of food so that each area could be rejuvenated again? And you come back, I mean, the animal kingdom does it. They move away with food and they come back to, to where they need for the dry seasons, each of the seasons. So why do you not think that humans would do the same thing too as well? So we have to start thinking about what is the Australian food system going to look like for us? Like, how do we do it? How do we celebrate all the stuff that really comes out of our ocean and talk about those seasons. Talk about crayfish season. Talk about like clam season. Talk about, those are the things that, like I said, we don't touch. We touch very little percentage of the world's food out there.
That is so true. Nornie, what an absolute joy to have you on Deep in the Weeds today. I just know we're going to have another conversation because there's too much to talk about by the sound of things. Please keep in touch and we'll catch up again soon.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Stay safe and be well.